Well, let's go to Nairobi because there we find Alanna O'Malley, who is an Associate Professor of International History at Leiden University and an expert on the UN. I have watched you, Alanna, doing your analysis outside the International Court of Justice for us on TRT World. Give us an 80-year report card for the UN. What grade?
We'd have to come in really around a C at this stage. The UN is widely now regarded as not being fit for purpose any longer. As you outlined, it was created in 1945 to save succeeding humanity from the scourge of war. But if we look at the conflicts around the globe today, then it's arguable, of course, that the UN has not fulfilled that purpose. But I think one thing we have to bear in mind about the UN is that it's only as strong as the member states allow it to be. And when you have large member states like Russia and also now like the United States, who disregard international law regarding fundamental principles such as violation of sovereignty and use of force, then of course you weaken the UN by those violations. For the other member states who try to hold those great powers accountable, the UN is the only mechanism of overview of state activity that we have on a global scale. So what is required now at this moment of the 80th anniversary of the signing of the Charter, and of course the 80th anniversary of the UN that comes in October, is that fundamental obligation to pour more resources into the UN, more financial resources, more political resources, and to really enliven and reinvigorate what those principles lay out that are laid out in the UN Charter.
Yeah, the politics that you point out are absolutely critical, of course. If we have time, we'll talk about the UN's humanitarian work as well and its conflict resolution. But in terms of the politics, is the biggest problem that very, very simple one of the 5 vetoes that exist on the Security Council for the permanent members?
The veto problem is always going to be something that people talk about, right? Because you have these 5 powers that each have a get-out-of-jail-free card on the Security Council that allows them to veto any issue that they don't agree with or that they don't want to talk about. And in particular, we see that US using the veto quite a lot in the last couple of years to protect Israel and to prevent a kind of legally binding resolution on the conflict in Gaza. But on the other hand, there are 193 member states in the UN. And what we see because of that veto problem is more and more recourse to the General Assembly, where the majority of the world's people are represented and where the majority public opinion can be shaped. And that's an important distinction that has taken place since 1945. And in recent years, we have more and more reinvigoration of the powers of the General Assembly. And that political pressure created by large-scale votes with huge majorities in the Assembly, as we've seen about the Gaza crisis, as we've seen about the Ukraine war, as we see about many issues, actually, that's really important in shaping public opinion. And that matters because all these states who are represented in the Assembly have electorates to which they are responsible. And so that filter of public opinion through the Assembly is actually really important in creating political pressure around certain questions. And I think also the General Assembly serves as a barometer of where states stand on certain issues. And that can influence bigger states like the United States, like Russia, like France in particular, to think about what their political question is. So those two elements are linked together. And I think it's also really important that we don't just talk about the UN in terms of the veto problem in the Security Council, because we've been having that conversation for 80 years and we haven't got a solution for it. We have to look at the other organs of the UN that can be made more powerful or be utilized to greater purposes in order to reinvigorate the potential of what the UN could do to address those questions of peace and security.
Yes, absolutely. We haven't got time to talk about its humanitarian work, but certainly that's one of the biggest positives. And as you say, it's such a huge organization with multiple specialized agencies that are working in some of the poorest countries in the world. Alanna, thank you so much.